Okay, hi there, and welcome to another video on Maneswar channel. After so long again, I have not been making Maneswar videos a lot. And to be honest, this is also not supposed to be a video. This was supposed to be directly recording that I have converted to be a video as well using Claude with adding some more details, make it a bit more objective and all the stuff. Because I think the base thing that I was supposed to talk in my direct recording was something that can be applied in a more generic way and can be helpful to a lot of other people in understanding themselves and in understanding others, and specifically understanding the people that are close and important to them, like their partners or close friends or someone like that. So this theory is just supposed to be my understanding of some of the observations that I have made subjectively. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not someone who is working in psychology, I'm not someone who's researching in psychology. So it's not a research paper, or else I would publish it as a research paper, obviously, as I do with my other of my theories and research. This is more of an observation, anecdote, and some theorization based on that. Since this is a Claude summary, so you might find a bit of an AI language, and I hope that's okay with you, because the actual variant recording is something very subjective to me that I wrote. Actually, I typed out in a human language. Starting with the points, the first is a bit of a summary or bit of an abstract of the whole thing. So the theory proposes that a child's core traits are formed either by adopting or rejecting their guardian's trait, and all adult behavior traces back to this acceptance negation pattern. This is the base theory of what I'm going to say. I have named it Myspy Freudian theory because I can see a lot of elements of it with fraud, and I have used the word Myspy because again I have a lot of interesting takes on this. I could have used the name Maneswar, but yeah. Unlike classical trauma-based psychology, it operates at the trait level rather than the behavioral conditioning. So this is an important take that I have from my side. Whatever kind of parenting one has, whatever kind of guardianship care give that they receive, they frame their behavioral conditioning based on that. It's like a very common thing, deterministic ways of humans and all this stuff. So it's nothing very new, but the new part that I'm talking about in my theory is to not look at this thing from at a behavioral conditioning level or trauma based psychology, how it is done in there, but I'm talking about to look at it at a trait level. When I say trait level, then basically I mean to say somewhat in terms of molecules and elements in a way. So the classical psychological theories that are used currently, the trauma-based theories or the other theories, it says that the kind of conditioning that you have got. So basically, if your parents have not valued you or given you that validation in your childhood, so you would seek that child validation all across your life, all across your relationships and connections. But what I'm talking about in my theory or in this base theory is that it is at a trait level thing. So what are the specific traits that your parent held due to which they were not able to give you validation? That trait is something that is actually affecting you, and you will try to negate or accept that trait itself. And the effect of the trait might be different because you are in a different age and time than your parents, but the traits are transferred in a positive or negative way. That is my base theory. And negation requires more cognitive agency than adoption, making the ratio of accepted to rejected traits a rough proxy for how deterministic versus agentic someone relationship with their own nature is. I will come to this point later in detail, but the basic idea is acceptance and negation doesn't just represent what kind of traits we get or not, but in a meta way, it also represents the kind of base personality that we are developing. And based on how many rejections one have of their guardians of their parent trait and how much acceptance they have of their guardians or parent traits, we can also decipher or conclude what kind of base deterministic or agentic features that they have in their life. Since this is a theory or idea proposed by me, so it does apply in a more recursive and corollary way, I guess. So if someone is more agentic and deterministic in life, then that also can be a representation of how much they have adopted or negated their parents and traits. So yeah, you can see it that way as well. Now, the general territory is well covered. Ronald Ronner's I-PAR theory is the closest parallel. It explicitly frames parenting through acceptance and rejections and traces how those shape adult personality over time. So the trauma-based thing, that is not just, again, empirically proven in a way with a lot of surveys and all, but as also currently used widely in psychology. So the base idea that parents' behavior shape the children's behavior is obviously very widely accepted, and the closest one in this category is this Ronald Roners. But surely the difference is I talk on the trait level and they talk on the behavior and conditioning level. Freud's own identification and reaction formation concept also maps cleanly onto the acceptance negation axis. So that's why I've chosen this name, because Freud is a very initial godfather of modern psychology, and he also talks about this in some way in his own acceptance negation axis. And Theorists like Alport and Big Five researchers have long established that stable personality traits are significantly shaped by parental influence, with twin studies further confirming that differences in parenting predicts differences in personality. So yeah, again, as I said, it's a very widely accepted thing, so you don't need to be skeptical about that, that how much parenting affects the child, and even the twin studies has been done. But again, the difference that I'm saying is based on the trait level that can in a way be also used to explain the behavior level changes or behavior level empirical or survey based data that these kind of theories and these kind of classically established ideas talk about. I guess I'm using all of this to base my theory on in a way, and to say how my ideas are also explaining these other ideas that are already seen to happen in the reality. The act of child rejecting parental traits also has a direct name: counter identification. It is a recognized concept in development psychology, describing how pre-adolescents and adolescents unconsciously seek to become different from, even opposed to, their caregivers, spanning personality, behavior, beliefs, and intellectual tendencies. It is so much like, I don't make videos like this, but yeah, basically these are some of the already established thoughts in the set of ideas that I'm talking about. So the raw ingredients of this theory: trait transmission, acceptance and negation, parental boundary settings, all exist. So everything that I'm saying, the ingredients already exist. What is missing in the current literature is how they are assembled and what is concluded from their assembly. So yeah, the result is already existing. Every ingredient is already existing. What I'm concluding is a new thing. Most frameworks treat acceptance and rejection as a spectrum of degree. This theory treats them as structured binary mapping, arguing that the specific pattern of what was accepted versus negated is itself meaningful and sufficient to explain adult behavior. So, along with the major acceptance and rejection theory, the whole spectrum by which I'm explaining the ideas also have a meta meaning that I'm talking about regarding agentic and deterministic nature of one's life. More distinctly, the idea that a person's default operating range is bounded by their guardian's traits, even though negation and traits genuinely outside of their set of parents. Harder problem is framing and not found in the existence. So, a third claim of what I'm saying that is new is the fact that to develop a trait or a quality in one that is not found in their parent in a positive or a negative way is an extremely hard task. So yeah, in a way it becomes like sum of x and not x is equal to the whole set, that kind of basic logic. But my base point here is that there's a set of traits that some people have, that a parent has, and it can be good or bad. So when a child can copy only the set of traits in negation or acceptance to the traits that their parents have. So if their parent doesn't have a trait, it doesn't even exist in their whole ways of living, let's say, neither in positive nor in negation, so they cannot copy it. So to get that specific trait, that new trait out of distribution trait, they will have to do some extra effort. So for an example, to make it easier, so let's say a parent is dishonest, so their child can copy honesty or dishonesty from their parent, depending how much deterministic or agentic they are. But at the same time, they will not copy something like epistemic humility. So basically my point is, traits that are not found in the parents doesn't directly come into the children with ease, and the traits that are already found does transmit easily, either in negation or in acceptance. And again, the base reasoning of this all can be broken down to the human mind being efficiency machine, and all of these things are cognitively heavy: negation as well as new trait invention kind of thing. So new trait invention is the most heaviest thing for our brain, so it will try to avoid that. And then negating the already existing trait is even heavier, so it will also try to avoid that. The most original contribution is the negation as a proxy for agency. The claim that ratio of neglected to adapted traits approximate how agentic versus deterministic a person is, and that negation is cognitively heavier than adopting because it requires recursive oppositions across a trait and its surrounding spaces. So yeah, the classic that I've been saying, I get that this video was not very properly structured, so the points are not that very properly expressed, majorly because it's a very subjective thing that I've experienced. To talk about it objectively require a lot of psychological grounding. So most probably if I talk about this to a psychologist in a like not a podcast kind of video, then it will make more sense. I will make sure to do that. But yeah, this is the basic idea that I have taken. So the basic three things that I talked new compared to what was already existing was: the first, that the transfer or the copy thing is done on trait level, not just on behavior level. The second, this positive or negative copying also indicates the amount of agentic and deterministic that person is. And the third conclusion, that there cannot be a new element in the set. We can only copy or negate what is already existing in our parent. So to get a new trait is a very heavy task, and therefore very hard and very less likely to happen. So yeah, that was my video on this thing. I hope you liked it. It was not very well structured. I hope that NLP becomes more useful to you. Have a good day. Bye. Take care. So basically, you can say a bit more abstracted and meta to what is generally discussed in the classical psychological theories. Sits at genuine the acceptance or negation doesn't just represent what kind of. They are really disappointed. Literally, I'm feeling bad for this guard uncle at this moment because I have been observing him from quite a lot, obviously, and he's just doing the same thing. I don't think machines can do this because machines will get fed up doing the same kind of thing, and because how stupid humans are, they are not able to follow some basic instructions and rule at this moment. It is so annoying.